The first gospel races from baptism to empty tomb. Mark gives us Jesus in motion, healing, confronting, dying, rising, the suffering Messiah who reigns through the cross. This is Seek, Go, Create. Welcome. You're listening to Read the New Testament in 90 days, 27 books in order, in context. We're walking through the New Testament the way it was written so you can hear it the way the first churches did. And I can guarantee you this, it'll change the way you see it and it will change the way you apply it in your life. I can guarantee that. So make sure you do this. We've got a lot of resources at k2m.foundation/NT90. That is our hub for the reading plan. Get your reading plan there. And we've got additional resources and things that you'll want to study up on. If you want to see some behind the scenes and other info, that would be the place to go. k2m.foundation/NT90. And again, you can also get a downloadable, printable version of the reading plan so that you could read along, follow along, and read the New Testament in order in 90 days. Today's stop is Mark, the first gospel that came on the scene as a written document. Here's some key facts to know. The author, we believe, is Mark, and we believe that Mark was recording Peter's testimony. It appears as if history shows that Mark and Peter would have been in Rome in the early 40s, 41 to 45, something like that, maybe a little bit later. And so we believe that this would have been written in the AD 45 to 50 time frame. We're going to put a timestamp of 48 on it, but let's just talk about it was written in the 40s. So early on, not long after the resurrection, so anywhere from maybe 12 to 16, 18 years, something like that. The audience that would most likely have received this gospel was a mixed audience. In other words, some that had Jewish background, but also some that were Gentiles that were starting to come into the faith, and most likely would have been addressed to people in areas like Rome. Early gospel circulation probably circulated around, but we're going to immerse ourselves in an audience that is in Rome. So a mixed audience there. So let's get the setting here. 18 years post-resurrection. So think back 18 years past when you're listening to this and just think about how long ago that might have seemed, but also how not so long ago it might have seemed. That's what would have been going on when the first readers saw the book of Mark. Resurrection was still in people's minds, still eyewitnesses, still people that would have been there. Some that may have heard it secondhand, third hand, maybe even more. The temple was still standing, but the believers were multiplying under the pressure that was coming from both Rome and the temple structure. In Rome, Claudius was on the throne. The Jews were expelled from Rome around AD 49, so this letter probably would have arrived, or this gospel probably would have arrived right before that happened. Some may have been reading it after, because Claudius got a little bit fed up with the Jews and some of the bickering probably that was going on between the Jews and the new followers of Christ. And Claudius just expelled them from Rome, sent them from Rome. We'll talk more about that later in some other books. Believers were probably meeting in cramped apartments in different sections of Rome. And in Jerusalem, the temple system was still intact. Daily sacrifices were continuing, and they would for about another 20 years before the temple would be destroyed during the AD 70 event. The church was growing fast, very fast. Peter was preaching the stories of Jesus over and over, and Mark writes them down. Here's the tension that's going on. Believers need to remember who Jesus is, his authority, his mission, his path through suffering to glory. And why now? Why would Mark capture this now? He wants to capture Peter's eyewitness testimony, and he does it in a very punchy, street-level narrative, fast, vivid, raw. That's what Mark is. It's fast. It moves quick. The word immediately is used over and over again. Note that as you're reading through Mark. It's urgent, it's relentless, and immediately seems to be one of his favorite words. Everything moves quickly. You'll hear about the kingdom at hand. Jesus announces that it's not distant, it's breaking in right now. Right now. The kingdom is at hand. It's authority in action. Demons flee, diseases vanish, storms obey, death reverses. There's some discipleship and failure. The 12 misunderstand what Jesus is trying to do with them and through them again and again and again. It's not really humorous, but it sort of gets funny knowing what we know now, that they just don't get it at times. And Peter's account probably would have been a humorous one, I think. My thoughts on this, to hear the stories told about how Jesus told him, "Get thee behind thee, Satan." The suffering Messiah is also addressed here. The Son of God dies the way Rome kills rebels. Death is something that they use for fear, and it's public, it's brutal, and also they just leave them abandoned. And then finally, the empty tomb. The women find it open, and a young man says, "He is risen." Mark doesn't explain, he shows. The centurion at the cross gets it right. Truly, this man was the Son of God. Now, here's your reading assignment. We're going to be reading Mark over the next 8 days. There's 8 sessions through this plan. Again, like I've encouraged you, if you can read it in one sitting, it will really mean a lot to you. Maybe read it multiple times over the next few days. But we've got the plan broken down where you can read about 2 chapters a day over the next 8 days to just immerse yourself in this Gospel of Mark. Just to give you a glimpse of what's next, the next episode will be Matthew, the King and his Kingdom, one of my favorite Gospels, written for Jewish believers who need to see how Jesus fulfills every promise. Before I get to something to wrap up here, I want to make sure you're following along. Like I said at the beginning, go to k2m.foundation/NT90. That's our hub for all that's going on. As these episodes are recorded, we're putting links there so that you could go there and go to the order of the podcast episodes, get the reading plan, download the reading plan. We're also going to be adding some reference pages to go through some background that you might be having some questions about on where we got the dates and where some of these historical items came from. And just a reminder, man, share this with a friend, man. What a great way to share with people is a read through the scripture, and especially if we're doing it in a compressed way in 90 days. So anyway, but before you read, let me set the scene. So listen to this. It's Rome, AD 48. Believers crowd into a cramped apartment building near the Tiber. Something new is circulating, a scroll. Compact, fast, no genealogies, no birth narrative, no lengthy sermons, just movement, relentless, breathless, urgent. Mark has been with Peter, listening to the stories over and over, and now he's written it down. Street-level narrative, punchy, vivid, raw. The scroll opens like a drumbeat. The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Now, let's read.